Welcome back to the Igniting Dreams Within podcast, where we solve life and business problems. I want to welcome you to season 2 of the Igniting Dreams Within podcast. Now, in season 2, we'll be focusing on pursuing purpose. The theme of season 2 is pursuing purpose holistically in the African context. We are going to be diving into what does it mean to pursue your purpose as an African. Not what does it mean to pursue purpose as an African within a European, within an Eastern, an American context. No. We are focusing on what does it mean for you and I as Africans to pursue our purposes in our own context, in our own terms. We want to find out what is it that makes me an African, and what contribution can I make for the betterment of Africa, and what contributions can I make that will better humanity, that will impact the world as a whole. And I remember coming up as a young man who grew up in a very religious home. You know, every time when you are going to church, you are hearing every sermon about purpose. This is God's purpose for your life. Pursue God's purpose for your life. But we never got deep into how do I pursue God's purpose for my life? And as an African, how do I pursue God's purpose for my life in my own African context? The context that it was, those sermons were preached were in a European, an American, an Eastern, all other contexts. But there was never my own context. And when I grew up and when I got on this journey, I remember when I just graduated from my matric and I was headed for university or college for my international audience. And I got there the first few months. You know, the first month of you just getting into varsity or college, it's very nice and exciting. You know, it's a new environment, a new place. You are just adapting. But as the weeks go by and the first month comes, then the excitement starts to fade away. Then as you are going to classes, you start to question yourself. Am I really in the area that I was created to be in? Am I really studying something that's aligned to my purpose? And this were the questions that were always constant on my mind. I was studying electrical engineering. And I was taken aback to a moment where I just recently finished my final exams in my matric. And I remember this moment when I was in the library and I was just going through the different careers that are available, the different engineering careers that were available. And I said to myself, I don't like engineering. I'm not going to study any form of engineering, even if it's electrical engineering. I don't like this engineering. It doesn't connect with me. But because I grew up in a poverty-stricken environment, poverty-stricken community, and also knowing my own family background, as the time for the results comes and it approaches, you start hearing people saying that it seems like you don't have a bursary, you didn't qualify for your bursary. How are you going to get your funding if you are going to pursue this psychologies? How are you going to get a bursary when you are pursuing this? Some would even term them as useless courses and degrees. And looking at my family background, looking at the poverty that I grew up in I remember the day when I got my results. The early morning, my phone was buzzing. And when it was buzzing, I had only applied to 3 universities. I applied to the University of Pretoria, I applied to the University of Cape Town, and Wits University. These were the only 3 universities. And I specifically applied for those universities because I wanted to study in the best universities in South Africa. And I qualified to study at those very best universities in South Africa. And I remember as those SMSs kept on coming in before I even got the results. Congratulations, you've been accepted to study electrical engineering at Wits University. Congratulations, all of those options of mine. But because of the rumors that I heard and what other people were recommending, because electrical engineering at the time, there were still some bursaries that were available, I said, you know what, you know what, let me just suck it up, man. Let me just suck it up and let me just study this electrical engineering for the sake of my poverty, so that I'm not too much of a burden on my parents' finances, on my family's finances, because I also had an older sister who's at varsity who was studying. And I also had a younger brother after me who wanted to also go. So I said, you know what, considering my poverty background, considering the background that I come from, let me just make the burden on my parents very small. And so I enrolled for engineering. And I remember as the weeks passed by, as the weeks kept on passing by, as we were doing the labs, lab practicals in the classes, while my friends wanted to know, while we were studying physics, we were studying chemistry, mathematics, what consumed my time most of the time was this hunger and desire for me to discover purpose. I wanted to know, is this really my calling? Am I really where God wants me to be at? And I remember when I came to the conclusion that no, I'm not in the right place. So with that frustration, I went for consultations, career counseling. We took psychometric tests and everything. And when these results came out, I realized that as a young man, I love to change people's lives. When we were at high school with my friends, I would be the one to even craft the mission of the year. And I remember my best friend Ditiro, we had a mission. We said that if we are going to succeed in our lives, we had to be determined, we had to be faithful, we needed to be committed, we needed to uphold ourselves to a standard of excellence in everything that we do. And each and every time I would be this guy who would be a romantic. I remember I was known even as Mr. Romantic in class, When everyone wanted to write a beautiful SMS to their boyfriend or their girlfriend, they would come to me, because I was just good at that. For some reason, this issue of changing people's lives or helping people's lives was in me from a very young age. When you would get to my room, you would find this motivational quotes, motivational scriptures there in my wall. Everywhere I would be, people would always come to me for advice. And because of the poverty that I grew up in, I said, you know what? These things won't take me far in life, Let me just do whatever it is. Let me do just whatever it's possible to alleviate the stress, the financial stress on my family. And let me just suck it up for a few years, study engineering. Then when I'm an engineer, when I'm qualified, then I'll do whatever it is that I liked. But as I was studying in those weeks, as I kept on asking myself, what is it really? And I remember at the time I was dating this girl who was studying psychology. And most of the time we would talk about her assignments. I would help her with her assignments. And we usually talked about Viktor Frankl. And something that transformed my life was a quote that Viktor Frankl said. He said that if a man or a woman is suffering, it does not matter what pains they are experiencing in their lives. But if there is a why, if there is a reason for their lives, if there is a purpose for their lives, the suffering that they are enduring, the suffering and the pain that they are going through will be worth it. And I determined that, no, let me find my own purpose for this pain that I am going through, this depression that I am in, these pains that I am going through mentally and psychologically. Let me make them worth it by discovering a purpose for my life. And when I got on this journey of purpose, I discovered that no, indeed, I wasn't called to be an engineer. I wasn't called to be an engineer. My calling was not with machines. My calling was not with electronics. But my calling and the purpose for my life was to better humanity. And I remember when I discovered my purpose and my vision in 2013, I discovered that my calling and purpose in life was to ignite dreams within my fellow Africans. I discovered that I wanted to transform followers into leaders who would serve their gifts to better humanity and to also help them help others to do the same. And it was in this journey that I discovered myself, that I discovered my purpose. And I'm very much thankful to the lockdown, because as we got into this lockdown, as I had my own cognitive dissonance with my own spirituality, with everything that, because during this lockdown I had enough time. I studied African history. I studied everything about what does it mean to be an African. Why is it that Africa has been enslaved so much? And I discovered that purpose has not been explored satisfactorily in an African context. Everyone who talks about purpose is talking about it either from a Western perspective, an American perspective, an Eastern, everyone's perspective. Even my fellow African men, they don't talk about what does it mean to pursue purpose in an African context. Now in this season 2, it's what we will be diving into. How do we pursue purpose holistically in an African context? And I will be bringing guests, and even I will be also having my solo episodes. I will be talking about pursuing purpose in an African perspective. So ladies and gentlemen, thank you for tuning in. I was just introducing season 2, and as we'll be going to the first episode and going forward, we'll be diving into the pursuit of purpose in an African context. Thank you for tuning in. I'll see you next time.